You're in for a treat. I'm Steve Dangle, and this is a very special trade tree video. I've ranted about the Leafs on YouTube since 2007, and I've always wanted to talk to one of the former GMs and be like, what were you thinking? So in a way, this is a dream come true. I'm sure lots of fans of any team would love to ask a former GM, what was that about? Why did the deal happen? Why did the deal look like how it was, and would you do anything differently? And as fate would have it, former Leafs GM and Flames president Brian Burke and I now work at the same place. So let's take a look at the Dion Phaneuf trade tree when he was traded from the Calgary Flames to the Toronto Maple Leafs, and to walk us along the way, we have special guest Brian Burke. In talking to Burke, one of the things that surprised me right away is that the Dion Phaneuf trade didn't exactly start with Dion Phaneuf.
Well, I remember that one pretty vividly, and I write about it in my book. Had to get that plug in there, Dangle. What happened was Ronnie Wilson had come to me and said that he wanted to get rid of three guys. Jamal Mayers, whom he liked as a player, but Jamal was very vocal and he wasn't always delivering the message that Ronnie was delivering. So he thought they're on two tracks. He said he wanted to get rid of Matty Hagman because he thought he was getting real gun shy. And he wanted to get rid of Ian White because he felt he was mistake prone. He didn't hate him. It wasn't like, you got to get rid of him right now. They're killing our room. Nothing like that. More like, if something comes along. So
very interesting. It sounds like former Leafs head coach Ron Wilson sort of got the ball rolling in a way. At very least, there was some collaboration there between the coach and the GM. So now Brian Burke has that in the back of his mind, but nothing solid, no trade offer exactly. But as fate would have it, Brian Burke and then Flames GM Daryl Sutter would have some conversations, and some of them were a little bit more colorful than others.
I had called Daryl Sutter into Calgary, and Daryl's very direct, and I said, the only guy I'm really interested in your team is Dion Phaneuf. That was on a Monday, and he said, I'm not moving Dion. I said, then we got nothing to discuss. The next day, I called Bob Murray in Anaheim, and he said, are you in on Phaneuf? And I said, well, he's not available. And he said, well, they just offered him to me. So I called Daryl back, and he said, I was swearing at him, and he said, relax, I was going to call you. He said, we've changed our mind, we put him in, but I said, all right, who do you like off my team? He said, well, I need some goal scoring right now. I want Hagman. We'd like Hagman, and we like Jamal Mayers. So I'm like, okay, there's two of the guys my coach wants to get rid of. He said, I need Matt Stajan in the deal, and we did not want to move Matt Stajan. He said, you got to take Freddie Schuster because I got to move some cash back. So I said, fine. Then he said, and then I'm losing the defense, and you got to put Ian White in. So there's our three problems gone in one trade.
Wow. Okay, that deal ballooned very fast. Right off the bat, 1, 2, 3, Daryl Sutter mentioned three guys who Ron Wilson had sort of hinted at Burke to put on the trading block. Jamal Mayers, Ian White, and Niklas Hagman. That's the good news. The bad news is he also wants Matt Stajan, who Burke didn't want to move. The Flames are adding Frederik Schuster to the deal. The deal is only happening because of Dion Phaneuf in the first place, so we have already got 6 names. That is one heck of a place to start, but the Leafs weren't done.
Our guys are saying you got to get Keith Ollie. So Rancher is his nickname. Rancher's a big 6'4" defenseman that we loved, and I said to Daryl, you got to put Ollie in. And he said, there's no way I'm doing that, and he hung up.
Oh, is getting hung up on bad? That sounds bad.
So I turned and said to Dave Poulin and Dave Nonis and Claude Lizell, if we lose this deal, I only cared about Dion. If we lose this deal over Keith Ollie, someone's getting fired, because we like every other part of it. Next day, Daryl called and said, we'll put Ollie in, but we can't do it till Sunday. And Saturday, we're all playing, and I said, well, it means we're running a big risk. He said, I'll do the deal sight unseen. Even if every player gets hurt, I'll still do it.
Okay, so hung up on, calls back the next day, you now have a 7-player deal, but with the caveat that all 7 players are about to play on Saturday night, Hockey Night in Canada. Yes, Daryl Sutter said he would do the trade even if every player in the deal got hurt, but that's easy to say when they were all healthy. Who knows what could have happened? All we know is what did happen. Every player made it through, so now it's Sunday. It's time for a deal. And now we have a trade to announce.
We've traded 4 players to the Calgary Flames in return for 3 players back. 4 players from the Toronto Maple Leafs are Nick Hagman, Matt Stajan, Ian White, Jamal Mayers. Coming back are Dion Phaneuf, Frederik Schuster, and Keith Ollie.
So there's the deal. The Calgary Flames acquire Matt Stajan, Jamal Mayers, Niklas Hagman, and Ian White. The Toronto Maple Leafs, on the other hand, acquire Frederick Sjustrom, Rancher, Keith Aulie, and Dion Phaneuf. Huge, enormous, a bombshell in both markets. On the Leafs end of things, Phaneuf, obviously this huge name. He was nominated for the Calder Trophy in the same year that Alex Ovechkin and Sidney Crosby were. He had a lot of hype, but there were all these whispers around Leafs Nation that you watch, one day Keith Aulie is going to be the best player in this deal. And you got to understand why. There was a significant amount of lore around Keith Aulie back in 2010, including one story in particular where Aulie, as a teenager, saved his father's life after he fell through ice. And it was true, Keith Aulie wasn't the meanest player, but he did knock out Scott Hartnell in a fight once. Sticking with the Calgary Flames for a second, their side of the trade tree is much shorter than the Leafs. The Flames won a goal scoring out of this deal, and Hagman was a great target. After all, he had 3 20-plus goal seasons, including this one, where he got traded. Unfortunately for the Flames, he never really found that goal-scoring touch again, and his career high with the Flames was 11. At the beginning of the 2011-12 season, the Flames ended up putting Hagman on waivers, where he was claimed by the Anaheim Ducks. Jamal Mayers scored even less. He had just 1 goal as a member of the Calgary Flames. That's because he only played 27 games with the Flames, and it was right after this deal, before leaving and signing as a free agent in San Jose. We'll leave Ian White for a second. Matt Stajan, here's a fun little game. Matt Stajan is one of those rare players who was with one team forever, but then he was with another team forever. Without looking, don't cheat. Who did Matt Stajan play more games for? I'll give you a sec, It was actually the Calgary Flames, and it wasn't even close. After 445 games as a member of the Toronto Maple Leafs, Stajan played 558 regular season games with the Flames. And for the Flames, it's great that it ended up that way, but remember, Matt Stajan ended up with the Flames, and not long after, so did Burke as well. And at first, it left Stajan wondering, am I getting traded again?
I got to Calgary, and it was the first day of training camp, and we had our meeting to start training camp. And Stage came up to me afterwards, and he said, if I got a problem, I said, Stage, I didn't want to trade you. We had to put you in the deal to get Dion. And I would have put two of you in the deal to get Dion, frankly. I said, but I didn't want to trade you. I have no problem with you as a kid, no problem with you as a player.
And Burke kept his word to Stajan, who spent nearly a decade with the Flames organization. Lastly, we have Ian White, who is the only player who the Flames got in this deal who ended up getting traded again. After being traded to the Flames in the 2009-10 season, Ian White was then shipped off to the Carolina Hurricanes just 16 games into the 2010-11 seasons. The trade was Ian White and Brett Sutter heading to Carolina in exchange for defenseman Anton Babchuk and forward Tom Kostopoulos. Brett Sutter, by the way, not to be confused with Brent Sutter or any of the other ones. Kostopoulos would play parts of 2 seasons with the Flames, Babchuk parts of 3. Getting back to the Leafs side of things, Dion Phaneuf wasting no time getting acquainted with Leafs Nation. He throws a big hit against a much younger Zach Parise, and all of a sudden, he's in a fight in his first period of action on home ice with the Toronto Maple Leafs against Colin White.
And now Phaneuf into a fight with Colin White.
Couldn't help but feel like Brian Burke might have had something to do with that.
I had mentioned to him on the phone when I called him, I said, look, I remember telling David Backes that when he went to Boston. I said, you want to be famous there, get in a fight in your first home game. And I think he did in the second game. I did say something like that to Dion, but I believe he did fight, but I didn't whisper to him he had to fight the first game. I said, just pick a scrap here, get in a scrap the first couple home games and show people you're serious. So yes, I've been known to do that.
So, right away, Dion Phaneuf, super popular right out of the gate. And there were no illusions. The Leafs weren't very good that year, but it's not like they had to make the playoffs. But outside of the hitting, which people loved, and the fighting, which people loved, Phaneuf struggled mightily to score in his first few games as a member of the Toronto Maple Leafs. And when you have a lot of hype and you struggle to score, things can be tough no matter where you are, but especially in Toronto. The next season, 2010-11, Phaneuf is doing his best to keep up with his end of the bargain, but injuries kept him to just 66 games and 8 goals. The next season, 2011-12, his best by far as a Leaf, at least in terms of production. A full 82-game season, 12 goals and 44 points. The problem was, Leafs still weren't very good. The lockout shortened season in 2013, though, Oh, Phaneuf, 9 goals and 19 assists for 28 points in just 48 games. That is a 15-goal pace, which is much closer to what he was doing in Calgary, and the analytics community might have argued that that Leafs team wasn't very good either, and maybe they weren't, but you know what? They won games and made the playoffs. Please don't ask how that playoff run ended. My therapist said it's not good for me, but unfortunately for Dion and the Leafs, it was a scoring pace that he would never again replicate as a member of the Toronto Maple Leafs. And the Leafs would never again make the playoffs with Dion Phaneuf as a member of the Leafs. So, where does this tree stand? Frederick Sjöström was a Leaf, but for only 1.5 seasons, 85 games. Keith Aulley didn't quite pan out. He was involved in more minor league deals with the Leafs, which basically ended up in them giving Tampa a 2016 7th rounder. That player that Tampa drafted with that pick, by the way, is a guy named Ryan Lohan, who played most of his season last year in the ECHL, but knowing it's Tampa, he might end up winning the Hart one day. Just thought I'd mention him. Anyway, and it seems like you can only trade Dion Phaneuf if it's a massive deal. The Toronto Maple Leafs sent Dion Phaneuf, their captain at the time, plus Matt Fratton, prospect Ryan Rupert, prospect Casey Bailey, and prospect Cody Donaghy to the Ottawa Senators, their divisional rival, their provincial rival, in exchange for forward Colin Greening, forward Milan Mahalik, forward prospect Tobias Lindberg, defenseman Jared Cowan, and a second-round pick in 2017. Phaneuf went from being involved in a 7-piece deal to a 10-piece deal. From the Leafs end of things, Dion Phaneuf, who had a much longer contract, which they had given him, by the way, and they retained nothing. And besides Dion Phaneuf, Casey Bailey was the only other player the Leafs gave the Senators who played for the Senators, and he only played 7 games. Rupert didn't play for the Sens, Donaghy didn't play for the Sens, and Matt Fratton didn't even play for the Sens minor league team. After being traded to Ottawa, he was actually loaned back to the Toronto Marlies. So the Leafs didn't trade Matt Fratton as much as they traded Matt Fratton? For Ottawa Senators fans, you can say whatever you want, but Dion Phaneuf did perform for them. Put up goals for them, put up hits for them, even if he wasn't the 20-goal scoring guy who the Flames had, the double Dion guy from the World Junior days. He was part of that 2017 Ottawa squad that went all the way to Game 7, double overtime against the Penguins. You know the story. I mean, you could always say that Dion Phaneuf went much farther in the playoffs with the Ottawa Senators than he did with the Toronto Maple Leafs. But the Leafs end of this trade tree was a lot of cap finagling. Jared Cowan, for example, thought he was coming over to the Toronto Maple Leafs to play in games. That ended up not happening on account of they bought him out. It went to arbitration and everything, and he had this weird deal where the Leafs were penalized for the buyout one season, but got cap relief the next. Prospect Tobias Lindberg did play a handful of games for the Toronto Maple Leafs when they were awful and tanking in 2015-16. He was later packaged with a 6th-round pick and traded to the Vegas Golden Knights for Calvin Pickard, who, yes, did win a Calder Cup with the Toronto Marlies, but the Leafs ended up losing him to waivers to the Philadelphia Flyers. Milan Mahalik is a weird blip in Leafs history because he was a cap dump in this deal, but he actually contributed to the Leafs when he was on them. He put up 6 points in 13 games at the end of the 2015-16 season when the Leafs were tanking for last place, but he actually made the 2016-17 Leafs, that young, exciting team, out of camp. Remember the home opener against Boston? Mitch Marner scores that goal, they lose their minds. Mahalik scored in that game. But despite all that, the Leafs went, yeah, but cap relief, and they sent him down to the minors. And unfortunately for Mahalik, he would never play in the NHL again. Colin Greening is a funny one for me because he gave me a lot of anxiety in 2016. The 2015-16 Leafs had one mission, and that was to finish in last place and hopefully get the first overall pick. This dude had 13 points in 41 games in the AHL that season. And he comes to the Leafs in the NHL, and he puts up more points with 15 in fewer games with 30. He scored at a half-a-point pace. And there were a bunch of nights where I was cheering for the Leafs to lose because I was all in on the tank, and I'm like, Colin, you're blowing it! The Leafs just finished in last place, though, and they ended up winning the draft lottery and getting Austin Matthews. Can you imagine if they didn't? Colin Greening would have been a big part of it, and Sens fans would have laughed. Greening was done in the NHL after that, but he would end up playing for the Toronto Marlies and even winning a Calder Cup with the Toronto Marlies in 2018. Last but not least, there was that second round pick the Leafs got from the Senators. Bit of an unfortunate story. The Leafs used it on right-hand defenseman, 6'7" defenseman, Emily Rasanen from the Kingston Frontenacs. Leaf fans are like, 6'7", yes, defenseman, yes, right-handed, yes. Unfortunately, Rasanen decided to leave the OHL and go to Europe. Hey, I'm gonna play against men and I'm gonna make some money. Unfortunately, he has really struggled to get into the lineup and his development has sort of been stifled, but he's still only 21 years old. You never know. So, the Flames' end of the trade tree is done. Unless something happens with Rasanen, so is the Leafs. Wrapping things up, with Dion Phaneuf, he was the captain of the Toronto Maple Leafs, this huge market, but some had this perception that he was kind of this quiet guy, a little bit reserved. What did Brian Burke have to say about that?
What he was measured, and you have to be. You see it with John Tavares now. As a captain of Toronto Maple Leafs, you've got to be measured all the time because everything you say gets blown up. So we talked to Dion about that. Just don't say outlandish things. Don't heap too much praise on anybody. Don't take any praise on yourself. Don't, you know, and so he was measured. You got to say the right thing. So Dion was careful with the media. I thought, and I see it with John Tavares, these are bright guys filtering what they say to make sure it doesn't blow back on the team.
Lastly, I wanted to see if I could fish any deep secrets about this trade, about the negotiations. Maybe there was something I missed. According to Brian Burke, with Daryl Sutter, you just don't get that.
Daryl Sutter is, all the Sutters are the same. They're incapable of lying. He couldn't lie if you were torturing him. Within 90 seconds, you have the small talk. How's your family? He had a dog named Meathead when I had him in Hartford when he was my coach. He had a bulldog named Meathead. So how's the dog? How are the kids? 90 seconds into the phone call, you're negotiating a trade. That can take 7 phone calls for some GMs. The guy says, I'm not sure what I need. I'm like, well, you watch them play every bloody night. What do you mean you don't know what you need? I can tell you what you need. Paul Holmgren, Daryl Sutter, they're just like me. Like, here's what I need. Here's what I'd move.
I'll end with my favorite thing about this trade. You know what it is? My favorite thing about this trade is when Brian Burke announced it, he walked out of the room, but before he did, he told everyone, sit tight, because he had something else he was working on. Later that day, later that hour, Brian Burke and the Toronto Maple Leafs made another trade. And we'll talk about that one in our next trade tree video. So, what'd you think of this one? Leave a comment in the comment box down below. And for now, that is it for this one. Thank you very much for watching. Click like if you like this video. Click subscribe if you really liked it. Tell all your friends. I'd trade 2 of you to get Dion. Hilarious, this guy.